the aim of this sort of next 25 minutes is just to raise some introductory points that I'd just really like to highlight. So firstly, thinking about understanding children's development in writing, and what do you know of the young writers in your classes? What is it around self-motivation to write that we can develop? What motivates you as a teacher? What do you enjoy teaching when you're teaching writing? Do you not enjoy it? Really asking yourself those questions, and then introducing you to the research theme, which is around sentence construction, and why have we focused on that as a key point. And then I'll be handing over to Rob, and he'll talk to you in a bit more detail about some of those things. I'm not sure how that second half works, but I'm sure Luke and Rob have got it all planned. So firstly, just to think about understanding children's development in writing. So just some of the things that we know that from research around writing. Some of you will have come across some of these things before. I'm trying to talk broadly to people who are teaching very young children, as well as people who are teaching older children. My timer is telling me to move on. So just the sort of first piece of research. So very young children don't register a difference between drawing and writing, as both involve a pencil. So at that very young age, it's about the tool that I'm using. That's the thing that's important. Way back, sort of like 10 years ago, we looked at thinking about broadening the definition of writing, so that we weren't just thinking about pencil and pens and writing on paper. And the National Literacy Trust sort of bore this out in their survey 10 years ago. 75% of children aged 8 to 13 said they wrote regularly if electronic texts were included in the definition. And so for me, around writing, one of the first things that I do when I work with children, even in, as a teacher, and also in writing clubs that I run outside school, is around, what do we mean by writing? What do you think I mean when I talk about writing? I know what my definition is, and I'm very keen to share that with children. I don't mean sitting at a desk, and I don't necessarily mean writing on paper. I might mean writing on screen. I might mean being out in the playground using chalk to write on the playground, etc. So really broadening that definition of writing. You won't be unfamiliar with the next point, which I think is too simplistic. There's a gender divide. 19% of boys said they didn't enjoy writing, compared with 8% of girls, and year on year we know that to be the case. I think it's very linked with the last point, that it depends what your definition is. So it depends what you're saying to children writing is. So my own work and my own doctorate that I then produced into a book that will be referenced in your pack, sorry, it's a shameless plug, isn't it, is very much around children who write outside school. So the types of writing that they do outside of school, they don't necessarily think is the same type of writing that you want in the classroom walls. So really, how do you bridge that gap between the types of writing that are happening outside of school? We do know from, I did some research at the beginning of lockdown, the types of writing that were emerging in the environment, in trees, on the floor of pavements, in parks, at people's windows. There was lots of examples of writing, but it's not necessarily writing we would see in the classroom or ask for in the classroom, but actually how can we encourage children to bring that external knowledge into the classroom? We benefit from that from reading. We've always benefited as teachers from that in reading. We don't expect children not to read outside of school. In fact, we encourage it, we embrace it. We say, bring your books in from home into school. We don't say the same with writing, unless you're a fabulous writing teacher, and I'm sure lots of you do that. When you're doing the presentation, always switch off WhatsApp. That would be my top tip there. A piece of work that was done a couple of years ago with the Arvon Foundation, where teachers became writers themselves down at a professional writing retreat. This was a quote that came from a teacher, which I think is really stayed with me. Children at school, who are they writing for? Are they writing for themselves to develop their self-expression, or are they writing in order to get a really good grade? Are they writing for a reaction from someone else? So again, what is it that we're asking children to write? And what happens to that writing that they do? And then the survey from the NLT just a couple of years ago found that those who like writing outside of school are 7 times more likely to write above expected levels. So that idea that if you're actually engaging with writing outside school and someone is asking you about it, you're more likely to enjoy writing and you're more likely to write above expected levels if you need that as a driver for what you're doing. We do know that there are stages of development that children go through when they're writing. We do know that sort of at about 9 or 10 years old is the time where something different happens in writing. Children begin to kind of think about the next steps of their writing. So in that process of writing, they're also able to think, right, what's going to happen next in their writing? So it's this kind of they think about this kind of chain-like quality of writing. What's next? What's next? What's next? And that's quite different for younger children who are very much in that sort of moment. So I think if you teach kind of year 4, my interest in writers is in year 4, because I think that that age, that's where children are really beginning to develop their own voices in writing, and there's a shift that happens. So I'm kind of quite interested in looking at that shift, seeing that shift. And there's quite a lot of argument about, certainly amongst some of the US academics, around at what age children are able to do what. I take the view that, you know, very young children want to share with you their thoughts, their ideas. You know, for those of you who teach in reception, you'll be very adept at very young children coming up to you with a piece of writing that you're then trying to decipher, because they're absolutely certain they know what it means, and that you will, by the power of your magic of being a teacher, be able to read it. And of course, you're looking at a string of letters that probably feature in their name, so letters that they're very familiar with. But you're all wonderful reception teachers, so you're able to then explain exactly what that piece of writing says. So let's talk about reception then. So this is a piece of work that myself and Teresa Kremin and Eve Bean did a few years ago. I went into school, this was my part of the project. I went into school and asked children, so why do you think your teacher says you're good at writing? And so this is what they told me. Oh, hang on, sorry. So I asked in reception and I asked in year 4. So just with the people sitting around you, what do you notice about those comments? Do you recognise any of your own children in that? What do you notice potential difference between reception and year 4? So I'll give you 2 minutes to have a chat on your table with the people around you.
We were saying on our table that we noticed a big shift between reception. It was about the group, there's a lot of we, and in year 4 it was a lot of I. So whether they were identifying them more independent in their writing.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, other people got that as well.
We were just saying that it's an identity in year 4 versus kind of the more administrative side of things in reception.
Sure. Yeah. So
and that independence, which we compliment them on so much in reception.
And you very much in reception, we're going to do a piece of writing, we're going to work together on this piece of writing, etc. So yeah, I think really, yeah, that's really nice. Excellent. What strikes me is the one in year 4 where the boy says, I never talk when I'm writing. According to his teacher, that's not entirely accurate. And chats all the way through and commentates as he's writing. I think the one for me that's really interesting is the bottom one for year 4. And this was said, so these children that came to talk to me were completely random children. They were, you know, it was a very busy classrooms, and the teacher went, U6, U6. So there wasn't any thought into, I was talking to particular children with particular characteristics around writing, which I was really pleased about. And I think asking the question, why do you think your teacher says you're good at writing, puts children in a different space as well. So rather than, you know, what do you think about writing? And this is built on David Ray's work from over 30 years ago, and the findings are still the same, where you ask children at the end of the year, what do children coming into this class next year need to know about writing in this classroom? And the responses are often around, you need to work hard, you need to practice your handwriting, and you need to spell well. And I always failed on that one because I have very poor spelling. I'm dyslexic, so I find spelling and punctuation, you might notice as well, quite a challenge. I have to really double check that. So actually asking those questions is quite good. You might want to think about that in the beginning of the year as you're working with your children. But the bottom one was said by a young man, which I thought was really interesting. Just because I'm not very good at it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. And I think we get the message with writing a lot of the time, and some of the big surveys that come out as well also talk around if you're good at it, you do better at it. If you do better at it, you enjoy it. Well, here is a young man that's saying quite the opposite. You know, my teacher says I'm not very good at it, but actually that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. Like, I like writing, the end product isn't great, but actually I enjoy the process. So I think, you know, really tapping into the sort of young writers in your classrooms in a way where you can find out about them as writers, I think is a really good starting point for any improvement in writing that you want to do. So we haven't got long left, so just a couple of ways where you might be able to do that. So thinking about self-motivation in writing and self-motivation to write, we know that if we get children to write about things that they enjoy, that they write better because they have that commitment to it. So I just want to share with you this piece of writing. So I'll let you think about what year group this child is in, and let you think about what time of year it is, and where the writing was done. I won't read it because that will give away some of it. And so this piece of writing for me exemplifies something that I talk about when I'm writing about writing, is this idea that children have got backpacks of practice. They've got things that they bring into school in their backpack, which has got skills and things that motivate them, things that interest them, approaches to writing that they may or may not share with you. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes just to have a look on the screen, think about what's being written. So can we have a volunteer who's going to read that out for us, please?
I don't mind doing it. So we hang decorations on the tree. Rudolph has a bell. Santa needs his gloves. It's cold. Where's Santa's Christmas tree? Santa has lots of toys. Look, Santa has found his Christmas tree. Santa is happy now.
Lovely, lovely expression. Thank you very much. So first question, how old, what year group is this child in? Someone's going to have to come off mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. I can't see anybody now. I can just see the screen and hear you. So it's a rather strange experience. Yeah, what year group?
We think year 2, if anything, beginning year 3, but we think year 2.
Year 2?
Because we were saying they learn apostrophes in year 2 and put them whenever they see an S.
Absolutely. So he's clearly, it's a he. He's clearly learned about apostrophes recently. Yeah, so he is year 2. He's year 5 when he writes. He's age 5 when he writes this. Anyone want to take a punt on the time of year?
Presumably Christmas time.
Presumably Christmas time, indeed. What do we think about him as a writer? What does he know about writing?
He knows to think, to try and link back to something that's been sort of commented on earlier on. So he's got his where's Santa's Christmas tree, and then he's linking back to that at the end when Santa's sort of found his Christmas tree. So he understands the fact that there needs to be some sort of story or something happening in it.
Yeah. So it gets about narrative structure, doesn't he, within the story, that idea of a story arc. Yeah. So he knows about that. Your colleague who read that out found it difficult to read it out without reading it with the intention that the writer had written it. So there was a bit of expression in the way that she was reading it out, and he's led you to do that. Look, Santa has found his Christmas tree. Oh, thank goodness, Santa is happy now. Christmas is going to happen. All is well. So he knows about kind of effect on the audience. What about his spelling? I need somebody off mute.
I mean, it's relatively accurate spelling until you get to the Rudolph, but yeah, obviously they've applied their knowledge to that.
Yeah, and plausible, I think. You know, he's put a double O in there. He knows it's a long sound, so he's gone and put the double O in there. So, and it's plausible for year 2. We wouldn't accept that if it was year 6, but year 2, that's perfectly plausible. I think there's probably an N missing in decorations. The N at the end is missing, but it's quite a long word, so maybe that's just fallen off the end. So, you know, if that was me as a teacher of a 5-year-old, I'd be pleased with that piece of writing. Big question we don't know the answer to is, were the stickers first or were the stickers afterwards? So there's a question there. And last question then, was it done at home or was it done at school?
Home.
Why'd you say that?
Because of the stickers.
Oh, because we don't allow stickers in school because we're very mean teachers. Yeah, completely agree. It is done at home, but it's not actually even done at home where he lives. So without wishing to finish the day on a bit of a low point, so this is Ben. It's Christmas time. His granddad's just died. And this is actually the day of his granddad's funeral that took place in France. So the whole family have gone over to France. They're at grandma's house. There's a lot of activity, a lot of adults talking, a lot of busyness, a lot of upset, etc. And so grandma has some plain paper on the table, some pens and some stickers. So that was the clue that it was at home. And this is what Ben chooses to do at the age of 5, surrounded with by all of those people in 6, not 5, surrounded by all of those people in that very busy kind of emotional atmosphere. So for me, what's really interesting about this piece of work is, as much as we talk about children's writing from home going into school, here is an example of a piece of writing or skills around writing that have gone from school into the home. So at a point where Ben is feeling very upset, maybe misunderstanding because of the age that he is, he's actually kind of almost taken solace in some structure that's come from school. There's paper, there's a pencil, I'm going to go to kind of a school experience and do some writing and using a structure that I've learned. So I always hold on to this piece of writing just to say Ben is now 19 years old and is studying sports science at Chichester, and he's still aware that I share this piece of writing, but he doesn't remember writing it, and neither does his mum. So it's quite interesting. I was at the funeral, as you probably would have worked out. I wouldn't randomly turn up and take a child's piece of writing off them. But that idea that what children learn in school goes into the home gets transformed and become something different, I think is really interesting. And where can you make spaces in your classrooms where you actually open up what I call passageways of practice, so that children are able to kind of have that experience from home and school, and from school back into the home as well. So one way that I do this with children is I make space for writing conversations. So I talk to children about the types of writing that they do. I talk to them very much around what can you see, what's visible in the writing that children do in the classroom, what's invisible, what's below the surface, and the good old iceberg metaphor, what's below the surface in terms of that piece of writing from Ben. There's heaps below the surface there. What do I presume about that piece of writing that he's done? I could have presumed it was done at school. What do I assume about his intention in his writing? And in my own research, I found that a lot of writing that children do at home, they choose to keep private. They want you to know that they do it in journals, on bits of paper that sit under, in cupboards and underneath beds, etc. But they want you to know that they do it, but they actually want the contents to remain private. And then where do you fit into all of that? So what do you bring to the writing process? Do children know what you're like as a writer and how writing works for you as an adult, who children often think that you're by magic, you've been able to kind of learn to do this very complex thing called writing. So if you've got time and space to have writing conversations, I would really suggest it. Rob, do we need children to know around why does it matter to their writing? So varying sentence length in the way that Ben did changes the impact of the writing on the reader, which is our intention, whether I am the reader of my own writing or I've got a wider audience. Keep the meaning clear in sentences, keeping to that one idea. And focus on that main idea. We know that children tend to use a multitude of all sorts of grammatical features that they've been taught, push it all into one sentence, and actually the sentence would have been far more effective without any of those things added in. Knowing the types of sentence so that you can actually have a discussion with children around the sentences they're using and which one is most impactful at what point in the writing. You'll know this from anything that you might have read from UKLA or from Deborah Myhill, that grammar should be contextualised. So teaching sentence structure away from quality reading and writing activity does not improve children's writing. We know that time and time again. So where can you get those things combined? Where can you use your extensive knowledge of reading for pleasure in order to support writing? And then think about motivation, curiosity, creativity, and I would include you in that as well. Where are you in all of those three things? And we know if children like what they're writing about, they'll write more and they'll likely write better as well.